Welcome to Halls on Film. I'm Sheldon Hall.
And I'm Christopher Hall.
And today we're going to be talking about two films. The Old Dark House, directed by James Whale in 1932.
Oh, and I've forgotten the name of the director of The Hireling.
Alan Bridges.
And we're going to be talking about The Hireling, directed by Alan Bridges, 1973.
Let's begin with The Old Dark House, the older of the two. This is a film that has just been This is a film that's just been released in 4K UHD by Eureka, although we didn't see the UHD version. Both of us have seen the 2018 edition, which is on straight Blu-ray. But we think they are approximately the same. They're certainly the same film. The Old Dark House is a film by probably the most celebrated horror director of the 1930s and 1940s. James Whale had directed the first full-length screen version of Frankenstein in 1931. British director, or director of British origin, who had made his name in the British theatre, made his first feature film in Hollywood, Journey's End, and went on to make Frankenstein, the classic adaptation starring, and which made a star of, Boris Karloff. The Old Dark House was a kind of follow-up to this, also made for Universal Pictures the year after Frankenstein. This is 1932, and starring Boris Karloff in what is actually quite a small role. He plays the part of the butler, Morgan, in the house of the title. Just to give a very brief rundown of the plot, a group of travellers arrives at an old dark house in the middle of a storm. Just to give a quick rundown of what happens, the Old Dark House features... Just to give a rundown of what happens, a small group of characters arrives at an old dark house in the middle of the Welsh mountains in a terrible storm, and are introduced to the Femme family, Horace, Rebecca, and others who are gradually revealed. And Boris Karloff plays the butler of the household, Morgan, essentially a non-speaking part.
Yeah, the only person, considering they're in Wales, with a Welsh name, and they don't give him any words.
There is a famous line when he speaks for the first time, and Melvyn Douglas has the line, apparently taken from the novel on which the film is based. Even Welsh ought not to sound like that. The novel, I should say, is by J.B. Priestley. The book was originally called Benighted and was retitled The Old Dark House for publication in America. And Priestley was at the beginning of his literary career at this point, so was not by any means a household name, as he subsequently became. The novel was adapted by Ben Levy, who was a British playwright and screenwriter, and most of the cast are British. James Whale himself, being British, had a lot of contacts in British theatre. Probably the key figure that he cast in his first Hollywood role is Charles Laughton, who plays one of the travellers, not one of the grotesques in the Femme household. And the film it's generally regarded as a horror film, but it's also, I think, primarily a black comedy. And one of the let me hand over to Chris, who will have something to say. No doubt.
Oh right, okay, yes, yeah, I think it's very funny. It's one of those films that is becoming a cult film.
If it isn't already.
And I think that's because it rewards reviewing and watching it again, because some of the lines are just fantastic. The one that stood out for me this time was just the joy that Eva Moore has as Rebecca Fenn.
Wonderful.
With all of her lines, particularly "no beds, you can't have beds," and many offers of potatoes around the dinner table. The potato scene in particular is a joy.
Absolutely,
to watch.
It's full of short quotable lines that are adaptable to other situations.
Yeah, but you were right. It is a black comedy before it's a horror film, and they're clearly enjoying themselves, particularly Eva Moore and Ernest Thesiger.
Absolutely,
with Ernest Thesiger's double takes and his looking around. it's almost Rocky Horror in its kind of meta-ness. They know exactly what they're doing,
Yeah.
and they're having a lot of fun doing it.
And as various people have pointed out, there is a distinctly camp gay sensibility behind
Yes.
it, both Thesiger and Whale being overtly gay. And that kind of satiric, winking humour runs right through the film. And the film is full of grotesque characters who are nevertheless rather lovable, I think. So there is a monster of sorts who is the most innocuous looking of all the family, who turns out to be a pyromaniac, and gives the film its climax. But essentially what the film gets its frisson from just exploring the space. So there's wonderful set constructed in the interiors of Universal Studios. And you just want to spend time exploring that space. And gradually the characters do move out of this vast central hall, and explore some of the nooks and crannies. We never get into some of the rooms.
And they have a lot of fun with the shadows as well. They're already subverting the shadow trope of the horror genre by this film, which is remarkable, particularly in the bit where the
Rebecca.
Yeah, not Rebecca. The one who wears the silk.
Yes.
The white silk.
I'm trying to remember her name.
Yeah.
Let me just check this.
She'll be in the pamphlet.
It's Gloria Stewart, but I don't know the character name. Character name is Margaret Waverton.
Yes, so they have a lot of fun with the shadows, particularly there's a brief scene where Margaret, who is one of the travellers, who's Raymond Mass's wife, is having a lot of fun doing shadow puppets on the wall, and suddenly, it's almost like one of the shadow scenes from one of the Austin Powers films. The Eva Moore character, Rebecca Femme, just suddenly appears from behind her. She doesn't know she's there, and that shocks her again.
And she doesn't appear in the flesh in that particular shot either. It's just a shadow.
So there's silliness like that all the way through, which just makes it a very enjoyable watch.
Yeah.
And you're right. There is that camp knowingness to it all, which is a lot of fun as well.
One of the things that's said about Priestley's novel is that it was a kind of allegory of the post-World War One, that is, post-war generation and post-war England in particular. That the characters represent different levels of society. So the self-made man, played by Charles Laughton, the kind of landed gentry in decay, represented by the family, the war veteran, played by Melvyn Douglas. I don't know that much of that comes across in the film. I think you have to be informed of that to be able to pick it up. I think the film is much more allegory. I don't think necessarily works as. I'll say that again. I don't know that allegory necessarily works as part of the cinematic medium very well. I think you're so much taken by what's actually on the screen, and indeed on the soundtrack, the concrete here and now of the story, rather than a kind of shadow story, as it were, taking place behind it. Do you think much of that comes across?
I was aware of that. You know, each time I've watched it, I was aware that this is about the changing of the class structure and the crumbling of the aristocracy, particularly. Sorry, particularly when they go up to see the father figure, Sir Roderick,
yes.
who's played by a woman. No, she doesn't change her voice, and he gives all of the backstory of what it was like pre-war, and that's very it's almost explaining the subtext of what's gone before. About, you know, this was a hall, this was a place where there were parties and everything. Eva Moore has some great monologues about the sin that happened prior to everything, and her brother is still existing in that world. He's almost dressed like a butler in a way, and they have some great on-screen interplay, the two of them. So that was something that I was very aware of. And Chris Cook once told me that he saw it as a being boiled down into that pan across the table where they're all trying to eat potatoes, and you get 3 different kinds of potato eating. And that boils it down to their class.
Interesting.
And it was like, well, yeah. So they revisit that, because was it Waverley? So Waverley has got some eyes in his potatoes, and he's just trying to dig it out without saying a word. They're just large boiled potatoes. The Rebecca Femme character is just eating the pickled onions and the potatoes as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And the Margaret character is just being very, very polite about everything, and it's just a nice, succinct way of showing the class attitude to food. So I did pick up on that, and then when I read about what the book was about, I went, yeah, of course it's about that, of course, and of course there's a line in it where Horace says, "Are you one of the men that was altered by the war, or spoiled by the war, or something like that?" And Penderell goes, "Oh yes," and just like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And that was a very pointed thing as well. But they don't want to talk about it.
I mean, the cinema of the 20s and early 30s is full of war veterans
Yeah.
who are, particularly once the arrival of sound comes in and allows the possibility of exploring this state of jaded cynicism, which seems to affect everyone.
Which of course he is. He's the most cynical character out of all of them, and wants to just wants to skim across it all, doesn't he? He doesn't want to. They're on their way to, we don't know why, Shrewsbury. So I don't know where they started from. North Wales to get to Shrewsbury, Mid Wales to get to Shrewsbury. Who knows? He doesn't want to go to Shrewsbury. He'd rather stay in Wales. And he finds very early on he's singing songs about anything that comes into his head in an amazing rainstorm sequence, an app with some miniature work as well. But it really looks as though it's absolutely bucketing it down.
Yeah. And that must have been done on a sound. Looks as if it was. That must have been done on a soundstage as well, rather than on location. I don't think there are any exteriors in the film. The entire thing is very kind of self-enclosed and claustrophobic.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the joys of it, isn't it? Particularly when they're in the garage, when they're in the stables, and the other character whose name I've forgotten. Sorry.
Which one?
It's Penderell and the other woman.
Gladys.
Yeah. So there's another, possibly my favourite scene from the sound design point of view, is when Penderell goes to the car, which is parked in the stables, to get the whiskey. Gladys goes with him. That's the beginning of their courtship, and they're falling in love. But every time something even a bit racy happens, a cockerel crows. So she takes off her shoe because it's wet. So a cockerel crows. She has a swig of whiskey. A cockerel crows.
Yes, I noticed it's cockerel crowing in the middle of the night.
Yeah, it's almost like a penny whistle.
Yes.
And again, silly but fun, and it puts you on the side of the. For me, it put me on the side of the filmmakers. Like, we're just having a lot of fun with this, and I don't know. What did you think about that as well? While you were watching it, or the fun aspect?
Oh,
of
absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one of those. The fun aspect of it is actually enhanced once you compare it with the remake. I watched the remake knowing that we were going to be talking about the film. I'd never seen the remake, so there was a version made in 1962. Sorry, what?
You could have told me that you.
I'm sorry. Well, I just occurred to me over the weekend. So I watched as preparation for this discussion. I watched the remake of The Old Dark House, which was made in Britain in 1962 as a co-production between Hammer and William Castle, the king of the gimmicks, and that is much more overtly a comedy and is cast if you think of the casting of the whale version, that the actors are grotesques, and they're not quite monstrous, but they are certainly grotesque. The casting in the remake involves a lot of British eccentrics. So you have Robert Morley in the Ernest Thesiger part. You cannot imagine two more different actors than Robert Morley and Ernest Thesiger. Joyce Grenfell in the Eva Moore part. And it's a bunch of character actors that you will recognise from other British movies of that era, Peter Bull and others. And it's much more overtly a comedy. It has a male lead in the form of Tom Poston, who is an American comedian, not familiar to me other than through this film. And it really doesn't quite work. It was shot in colour, but released only in America in black and white. And I sampled the black and white version, and it plays better than the colour version. Even so, it lacks the kind of intense atmospherics of the whale version. And it's a model instance, actually, of how overplaying comedy can result in a much less successful comedy than something which actually emphasises the grotesquerie as in the way that Wales film does.
Yeah. It's almost with Wales film. They play it straight, and what they say and what they do is the funny stuff, but they are playing it deadly serious. Yeah. In a similar way to Young Frankenstein, they are playing that absolutely serious, but everything else is silly. Which of course, Young
and there's none of the kind
on
of slapsticky running about that there is in the remake, or the death scenes played for laughs, that kind of thing. So a model instance, I think, of black comic horror. In a way that doesn't really date. I mean, we're now talking. What is it? It's 93 years old, this film, and I think it will play with a modern audience. I was thinking as I was watching it of how much this would be enjoyed by the kind of audience that comes to Celluloid Screams at Showroom, for instance, the annual horror festival. I would love to see that played before a modern audience, because I think it would absolutely work.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's got a modern sensibility. Yeah, and it's got Charles Laughton in it, and in particular his characterization and the mannerisms he gives his character are still part of the modern vocabulary of playing Yorkshiremen, self-made men, the nouveau riche, and he nailed it, as you say, almost.
And it's not a caricature either. I mean, it is the character has depth, and is not just played for laughs. As all of the characters are funny in one way or another, but they don't just play for laughs, and that character is given a poignancy and a depth to it, which comes from an actor like Laughton. What
did you think? There's a statement before the film starts explaining that this is Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
What did you think about that statement?
I don't think I'd come across that before. I had seen the film before on television. In fact, while we're talking about this, I saw its very first British broadcast, because it wasn't shown on television in this country until 1983, when it was shown on Channel 4. The early years, the first year of Channel 4. And it had been out of circulation for 20-odd years, if not longer, because of copyright problems. It may have been that the copyright problems are traceable to the remake, but whatever, the literary copyright prevented the film from being either shown commercially in cinemas or shown on television. So I saw the very first British broadcast of the film. I was there, I can say, and I've certainly seen it since. It's been several times on. It hasn't been very often on television, but I've seen it a couple of times since then. But I don't remember, to come back to your point, seeing that opening caption in which it's explained to us that this Karloff is in fact the same Karloff, as if there were two actors called Karloff, the same Karloff that we would have seen in Frankenstein. A tribute to his versatility, I think the caption says. So that was an unusual way of framing a character actor who is also a star, because obviously an aspect of Karloff's stardom is his ability to transform himself or be transformed through makeup. And of course, his the makeup designs are among the things that are most impressive. Both Frankenstein and Old Dark House had makeup designed by Jack Pierce, one of the great makeup designers in cinema history, who's not actually credited in the opening titles of the film, was nevertheless obviously crucial to its success.
Yeah.
Maybe you should say something about the extras on the disc. There's the audio commentary.
Oh, there's a video essay about the Femmes.
The video essay is by David Kearns, who's a friend of mine.
There's an interview with, I think, Boris Karloff's daughter about the makeup.
Sarah Karloff.
And there is a documentary about how Curtis Harrington was a friend of James Whale and helped secure the original negative, I think, from the lab, and got them to do the original restoration. All very, very interesting.
Yes, it was one of those
three audio commentaries, I think.
Yes, 3 audio commentaries which are presumably carried over from previous video editions of the film, including quite possibly laserdiscs. I have not checked this, but the film has had a number of previous.
So it was released on
editions.
Laserdisc.
I believe so.
Back in the Laserdisc era.
I believe so.
Okay.
One of the commentaries is by Gloria Stewart. So people will remember her as the woman that Kate Winslet grew up to be, as it were, in Titanic, and was around to give an audio commentary for the film, I believe, when it was released on Laserdisc.
So there's a very Hitchcockian scene in certain ways, although it's Hitchcock turned up to 11, where she's her clothes are wet, so Rebecca says, "Oh, come and get dressed. Come and get changed in my room." So she gets changed in her room. She opens the window. The wind comes in, and Rebecca has to come back into the room, but she can't close the window either. In the meantime, Gloria Stewart is in her petticoat and underwear, and again, it was one of those. It's a bit like an absolutely fabulous scene where Eva Moore, who plays Rebecca Femme, just says, everything will rot. Everything will rot. Your skin, your legs, everything will rot. And
that's fine stuff, but it'll rot.
Yeah.
That's finer stuff still, but it'll rot too.
And nothing is, and then she just goes.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And there's also some wonderful expressionistic camera work in that particular sequence. The shots of Rebecca in the distorting mirrors that are in an adjacent space.
Yeah.
And that's a film that's visually very stylish, but really kind of enters into is it surreal or is it expressionistic, however you want to put it, takes off at that particular point into kind of visual abstraction.
And Eva Moore just is clearly relishing delivering those lines.
One thing I learned from the essay in the booklet is that she was Laurence Olivier's stepmother. Sorry. One thing I learned from the booklet is that she's Laurence Olivier's mother-in-law.
So she was the mother of Olivier's first wife? Wow.
Just double-check this to be on the safe side. Yes. A star of the London stage since the 1890s, Moore was mother of the actress Jill Esmond, at that time married to Laurence Olivier.
There we are. Yeah. And she did, you can see her theatrical origins in the forwards.
Shall I just say that again?
Yes.
One thing I learned from the booklet essay is that Eva Moore was Laurence Olivier's mother-in-law at the time, mother of his then wife Jill Esmond. Okay. And we also have audio commentaries by Kim Newman, horror expert Kim Newman, and Stephen Jones. There's also an audio commentary by James Whale's biographer James Curtis. So lots of extra material here. A very good visual essay by David Cairns, and additional visual stimulation in the form of stills, posters, and whatnot. And a very good booklet essay. In fact, I learned a lot reading the booklet essay, which told me all sorts of things about the background to the story. I should give a credit to Philip Kemp, who wrote the essay there.
Yeah, I enjoyed the booklet. And having lots of territories posters as well.
Yeah.
To see how it was promoted.
Yes,
at
the
time.
booklet
That's a
also
nice little
reproduces
booklet.
a lot of the poster material and advertising material that's carried in electronic form on the disc.
And of course, it's from the era of dual editions, so it's a Blu-ray and a DVD
Indeed,
edition.
so those of you who still watch films on standard edition DVD have the option of watching that or the Blu-ray, and of course the UHD if you buy the UHD too. So lots of viewing options here.
So let's move on to The Hireling. So this is a 1973 film. I was drawn to it because it's a new release on Indicator Films. I'd heard of it, I'd never seen it. It's got Robert Shaw in it, so that's a reason to see anything. Sarah Miles in it, again a reason to see anything, and it's written by Wolf Mankiewicz, again an adaptation of a novel. Reason to see anything with Wolf Mankiewicz doing the script, and not incongruously, but the only time I've ever seen him outside of Ever Decreasing Circles, the 1980s sitcom, Peter Egan. And based on those two examples, Peter Egan has a type and is clearly very good at inhabiting a Peter Egan type-ish role. So shall we start with that? What did you think of The Hireling?
No, I'd seen this before, unlike you. I'd seen it a couple of years ago, so it was relatively fresh in my memory, and therefore I was prepared for the various plot developments, and I could see how they were being prepared for as the film builds up to its various emotional climaxes. This is one of those films that I think is perennially underrated because it is so understated dramatically. It's under-directed, if you like, but I think it's beautifully directed. The director, we should say, is Alan Bridges, who was a television veteran. He'd made 2 films for the big screen in the early 1960s, both effectively B pictures. A thriller called Act of Murder, part of the Edgar Wallace series, and a low-budget science fiction film called Invasion. But he'd mainly made his name in television, and this is his first prestigious big-screen film, big-budget film, relatively big-budget film. And I think it's a model of kind of directorial discretion. The kind of film that Bridges was drawn to was the sort of British period drama, not necessarily adapted from a well-known literary text. This is from a novel by L.P. Hartley, who's probably best known as the author of the novel that became The Go-Between a couple of years before this. But his films have a lot of British virtues that are often seen as weaknesses. That is to say, an attentiveness to place and to setting, to character, to performance, rather than visual showmanship, if you like. I think it is exceptionally well directed visually in terms of the way in which camera, lenses, space, lighting, composition and so forth are used expressively, but not in a very demonstrative way. And if you're not paying careful attention to that, I think you can easily miss those qualities of direction that are present. And in some ways that's the kind of direction I really appreciate, the kind of deceptively understated. It's set in the aftermath of World War One. The period is not specified, but sometime in the 1920s, most likely. And the central character played by Sarah Miles is the widow of a politician who has been a member of the aristocracy, who comes from a very landed family, who has, in the wake of her husband's death, been treated in a sanatorium where we first see her, and is released apparently because the head of the sanatorium simply wants her out of his hair.
Yeah.
It seems impatient to get rid of her.
And she is reluctant to leave.
And she's reluctant to leave. So this
yeah.
is the first time she's been exposed to the world without her husband in tow. And her mother, her elderly mother, is unsympathetic to her condition. Is more concerned about what the workmen will think of her daughter's mental condition than of her daughter's welfare. And Miles develops a kind of relationship, friendship, with the chauffeur, the hired car driver, who ferries her between the sanatorium and her mother's townhouse and the stately home where she her family lives. And the various drives that they go on allow Miles's character to essentially reacclimatise to the world, having been shut away from it for, we understand, a considerable length of time. And she breaks down to a degree the class barrier between them by moving from the back seat of the car in which she's been driven to the front seat. In some ways discomforting the driver, played by Robert Shaw, and kind of upsetting the kind of class hierarchy. And the driver, Ledbetter, clearly develops an obsession with her, which turns into a kind of one-sided love affair. And alas, her ladyship realizes too late that she has given him the wrong signals. She becomes engaged to a politician who is effectively taking over her husband's role in several senses, and an intense jealousy erupts between Ledbetter and the Peter Egan character whom you've mentioned. All of this sounds like the basis of an intense melodrama, but it's actually rather, as we've said, understated, and a lot of the tensions are beneath the surface, but are revealed to us through kind of one-to-one interactions between the actors, gestures, glances.
I hadn't heard much about it. It's not one of those things that's mentioned a lot. But having done a bit of reading about it and then watching it, it doesn't surprise me that it won the
Palme d'Or.
The Palme d'Or at Cannes that year, because it's a subtle examination of the class system, particularly between men, particularly between ex-military men.
Yeah.
And what is said and what is not said and how they talk to each other.
Yeah.
Ledbetter, at any one time, is called Ledbetter, Steve, Sergeant Major, or Mr. Ledbetter,
right,
depending on who is talking to him, for obvious reasons. So he's the character that straddles the four different levels of society that we are witnessing. It sounds obvious, but it's kind of, again, another good indicator. And you have to concentrate? I don't know. But it's very clear. Oh, right, yeah. Of course she would call him Mr. Ledbetter, but Sarah Miles would call him Ledbetter. And his mechanic at the garage that he works at, of course, he would call him Steve. And the other ex-military people would call him Sergeant Major. And then at one point, the Peter Egan character, who had a higher rank than him in the army, calls him Sergeant Major to make sure that he understands.
And who still goes by his designation Captain.
Yes.
As often happened.
Yeah. So to make it very, very clear who's in charge.
Yeah.
So that is part of it as well, which was very enjoyable. Possibly because I don't come from a military family, I don't know. But it was another kind of like window into that world, which felt authentic. Particularly one of my favourite scenes, or extended scenes, which I don't want to spoil too much of, takes place at a boxing club that the Robert Shaw character is running, and it's a boxing club competition which he's asked Sarah Miles to sponsor a cup and winning, and the Peter Egan character arrives late, and it's about the negotiation of the different levels of society by the different characters and how they do it, and it's just like, you've done that really well. All the script, the staging, the direction, the performances, it all works really well. The awkwardness, the entitlement of particularly of the Peter Egan character. It's another contemporary reference. It's kind of reminiscent of the Fast Show sketch
Yes, indeed. Of course.
Yeah.
Ralph and Ted.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. I hadn't thought of that, but now you mentioned it.
Yeah. And not obviously not as funny, but there is that awkwardness is always there when Peter Egan shares the screen with Robert Shaw, which I just loved. I could have watched a much longer film just with them negotiating it all, because what we were talking about earlier before we started recording is they're all very nuanced characters. They're all flawed characters, and my sympathy and empathy shifted throughout the film as it went on, because I did you felt kind of compassion for the Robert Shaw character, because he's clearly alone, and he without revealing too much, he lies about his family situation in order to by his own admission make the Sarah Miles character feel less awkward about being in the car with him, and you really feel for him. And then things turn, and you think, "Oh no, don't be like that." And then he gets two cathartic moments at the end of the film, when you just think, "Come on, mate, have one cathartic moment, don't have two." And woven within that as the and these were some of my favourite cuts throughout the film, as the Peter Egan character gets more and more involved with Sarah Miles. Is he's still the driver, and there will be bits like they've just finished a nice meal, and they're just coming out of the club. Suddenly arrives, and he puts the brake on, and he's very much, and he's always there interrupting whatever kind of reverie they're trying to get in, and that's those scenes are very nicely staged. And at the end, in the final. It's not really a climax, is it? But it's a denouement. It's definitely the logical end to all of these various emotions that everybody's feeling. The car is also part of the interruption of their final the scene. Again, not wanting to reveal too much. So the car is also an important character within it, which is very interesting as well. But the Robert Shaw character is so far away from some, obviously Jaws, but his later work where he was the gruff old person. He's like very tightly wound, and
his resentments at his class position emerge as the drama goes on. My favourite scene in the film is it comes about 3/4 of the way through, and it's at the point where Lady Franklin is beginning to recover her composure and return to a normal routine in her stately home. And she's visited by Ledbetter, the driver, and there is an exchange between them. She's busying herself putting up pictures and whatnot, and eventually insists on writing him a cheque to tide him over his financial problems, which he initially resists. But the tension between them is brought out partly by the nuance of performances. It's a series of reverse shots of the two of them, and partly also by the choice of distance. It's a really good use, I think, of the distance between characters and the distance from the character of the actors, and the choice of lenses. So the relative use of a long lens to keep a distance between the two of them, which suggests that the initial proximity which they had through the car is now being attenuated and the link between them broken as she returns to normality. And that whole sequence is beautifully sustained, I think, and a model of kind of careful blocking, framing, camera work, and so forth.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes, brilliant scene in the long room.
There you go.
And it is remarkable for everything you just said. And also, this is very much her space. When they're in the car, it's his space.
Yeah.
She's still got a lot of agency in it, but it's definitely his space now. But now you're right. As she is beginning to re-enter that strata of society, he is now in her space, and it changes the dynamic.
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. The visuals in the boxing club, I just think are brilliant, because of the way that the different people are interacting with each other. It did mainly possibly because I watched it over the summer. There was a bit of it which I thought, oh, this is a bit like Fireman's Ball, the Milos Forman film, with lots of people just milling around trying to make a decision. But that was, and you're right, that in the Long Gallery, when they are separated by her wealth. Yeah,
and it's things like this that are underrated, I think, that why Ellen Bridges is not a more celebrated director is it's all there on the screen, but it doesn't shout out at you.
Yeah, it's out of vogue at the moment, that kind of filmmaking, isn't it?
It's not at all on the nose.
No,
and
you have to work. You have to work with the film, don't you?
And to an extent, also the narrative is left open. It's probably worth saying, just tying these two films together, I don't think we thought of this when we selected them, but both of these films are in their different ways about the aftermath of World War One. Both about the adjustments of British society to post-war conditions, rather more allegorically in the case of The Old Dark House, more explicitly in the case of The Hireling, and yet there is still that commonality, that link across the 41 years that separate them.
Because of Sarah Miles, and because I've seen it so many times, when I was watching it, I was thinking a lot about The Servant. I then started thinking, yes, a lot of successful 20th century literature and films, you can't get away from the class system. You can't get away from... And the frustration...
The Old Dark House is more overtly about its collapse. But, here we have those class barriers being re-erected rather than society being transformed.
And it feels like there's a frustration on the Robert Shaw character that he can't transcend class boundaries.
Yeah.
But maybe that was just me reading into it.
No, I mean, his initial presentation when he drives Lady Franklin for the first time, he is one of those upholding the traditional class barriers. He is mildly shocked at her suggestion that she should sit in the front seat rather than in the back seat. So he actively maintains the class separation and the class distinctions in the early part of the film. But as you say, as the drama develops, he becomes increasingly resentful about the way he's kept back by the actions and the attitudes of various of the male characters in particular, but that also by the Miles character, by Lady Franklin, she too has internalized that sense of there is a point beyond which the class barriers cannot be overcome.
Yeah.
And so
it
clearly never occurs to her that she is she's being seen by Ledbetter as a potential romantic interest, to use that horrible expression.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think she ends up using him because she uses him as a kind of prop in her psychological recovery. And it doesn't occur to her that he has feelings and thoughts of his own. Or ambitions of his own beyond business. There's a kind of imperception which is class based as much as it is about
I don't think she does it intentionally.
No, indeed not. It's simply.
It's either hang out with him or hang out with her mother, who is a nightmare.
Yes, quite.
and lives on the Royal Crescent in Bath. And you understand right from the get-go that the mother is not a safe place for this woman who's recovering from possibly a nervous breakdown, and maybe other things. That's not a good place for her to be. So she needs to be with somebody who's stable.
If there's an aspect of the film that I think is wanting, I would like to have heard more about the relationship between Lady Franklin and the captain. I'd like to have seen that love story, if you like, that relationship develop a bit more fully than we do. It's quite it's very much secondary to the prominence of the Shaw character.
Yeah, because we see it a lot from the perspective of Robert Shaw.
We have only a couple of scenes of the couple together, and I would have liked to know more about how that relationship develops. In a way, it has to, for the sake of narrative, it has to develop relatively quickly and economically. But even so, I would like to have had a bit more. Perhaps there is more in the novel. I don't know.
Just briefly, I mean, you were talking about it's a very nuanced hand at the direction. When they are first leaving the sanatorium and he's picked her up, they go through working class rural areas, and she's looking at working class agricultural setting, and then eventually, as I say, they go to a very well-heeled area of Bath, and that's used a lot throughout the film as well. The geographical setting of these places, it's as showing how the different classes live, and that's used as well in the film. The geographical setting and showing how the different classes live, and it's not too much of a let's contrast these things, because it's always done from a reflection or just them going through down a road or round a corner or whatever. But it's clearly a point that's being made as well. And my God, there are a lot of very good shots of mirrors, and through doorways and different planes, and there's a lot of that going on of different levels.
Sure.
And
the glass pane that separates the front and back seats of the car.
Yeah.
So there's a lengthy sequence, several lengthy sequences in which discussions in the back seat of the car are shot through the pane of glass, which allows us very slight reflections of the back of Robert Shaw's head. It's underdone deliberately and thankfully underdone, but it's just there in the frame, in the shot, to remind us that he's listening, he's taking everything in. It's going to have an effect later in the narrative.
Yeah. Go on, remind me about the special features.
So there are a couple of short featurettes on the disc which involve interviews with some members of the production team, as well as Sarah Miles and Ian Hogg, the actor who plays the mechanic in Shaw's Garage.
Yeah.
And an audio interview with Phyllis Dalton, the costume designer.
That was the one I listened to the most. The costume designer.
I didn't listen to them, I have to admit.
Yeah, because I wondered what they were going to tell us about the costumes, but actually I found that the most interesting.
In the booklet, the thing I find most useful was an archival interview with Wolf Mankiewicz, the screenwriter, talking about the process of adaptation, selection, how he chose to emphasize different aspects of it and develop it in a different way from the original author, but also how the director, Alan Bridges, adapted the screenplay in ways that he didn't necessarily approve of. He felt he could have gone further in certain directions in the making of the film, and that as a screenwriter's perspective, both on the source material and on the realization of a script by the director, is a kind of useful tool, I think.
And that was a contemporary interview as well, I think, wasn't
Yes,
it?
from the mid-1970s,
Yeah.
so just after the film had been released.
Which is, again, another interesting thing, because nowadays everybody signs NDAs and nobody can talk about it. But at the time, people could go, oh, yeah, we didn't have a good time filming this. It was difficult.
He's respectful towards Bridges while not necessarily agreeing with every decision that the director took.
Yeah. I think the word is professional, isn't it? It's just
Yes.
a professional disagreement. Yeah. Would you watch it again?
Oh, very much, yes. As I say, I'd seen it only a couple of years before, and it still was worth revisiting just for the sake of this discussion. So I was grateful to have had the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
What about, and I know I'll be watching The Dark House again, because it's a very enjoyable watch.
I am going to propose The Old Dark House to the programme of our local horror film festival as a possible screening choice for next year.
With an introduction by you.
I might mention the possibility of that in passing.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much for listening.
This has been Sheldon Hall.
And I'm Christopher Hall, and we look forward to seeing you next time.